Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting this evening's show. On the hazardous weather graphic, wind advisory is over now across the Brooks Range, North Slope, Eastern Arctic coast. Winds dropping off there, but picking up here. So we got wind chill advisories that ended up here for the Brooks Range and the North Slope, and a wind chill advisory now in effect for the Seward Peninsula until noontime Monday for wind chills of 40 to 50 degrees below zero. A little bit of an increase in the winds going on there and the colder temperatures. On satellite imagery, I got some clouds here, really big ridge of high pressure out here over the central Bering Sea. That's been holding this front back from much eastward progress, with the main low center pulling back to the northwest. Now weakening, doesn't have nearly the wind field it had yesterday with it over the western Aleutians today. Still a band of clouds, breezy conditions, and occasionally wet down there across mostly just near Adak back to the west, and Shimia more in a showery condition now. And cold air, low clouds due to the cold air coming out over the open Bering Sea off the progressing southward of the ice sheet here. Produced clouds, a few flurries here all the way down to the eastern Aleutians, and also mainly on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, some light snow going on there, and then a break on the lee side of the Aleutian Range and the peninsula, and then that picks up more snow showers through this area. So Kodiak kind of in the middle there. We had some clearing over Bristol Bay. Clear and cold up here through much of interior Alaska, especially over the western areas, with a trough axis right through here. On the east side of that, we've got more of a southerly flow. Some of this moisture caught up in that, pulling northward across the eastern interior there. One surge coming up brought some areas of light snow to the North Gulf Coast, into Prince William Sound, as well as the southeast interior here. Nothing significant. We had a weakening disturbance also lifting north and dissipating over the Panhandle. Just light precipitation amounts across the entire southeast coast. I think Hoonah had about 1/10 of an inch of rain during the day today on Sunday. And that was about it, one of the heavier amounts, with, again, clouds, areas of light precipitation up over the eastern interior areas. And more clouds down here. Eventually it'll be coming back to the northwest, sort of enhancing tomorrow as it gets caught up in that trough axis here. It's lying roughly right across the central interior areas, with the colder, drier northerly flow back here to the west, and the more cloudy, a little bit snowier conditions here to the east, holding temperatures up from what they otherwise would be if it was as clear as it is back here to the west. Otherwise, just kind of some snow showers milling around the Kodiak Island area with some clouds, kind of a counterclockwise circulation there, another one off to the southeast. And that'll probably continue into this evening. But on the chart today, we have one 990 millibar low here in the Gulf of Alaska, and then this weakening system really washing out this afternoon, bringing moisture from south to north. Light amounts, again, about 1/10 of an inch at the most, and that's it. Most everywhere else had less than that, or just a few hundredths, or nothing at all. And then some of that light snow condition pushing up into Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast here, locally and over the eastern interior, and a narrow band of some light snow from the eastern Arctic coast into the upper Yukon through the central Tanana Valley, trailing back down along with low clouds spreading southwestward today into the west side of the Alaska Range into the Kuskokwim Valley. But again, that's very light snowfall amounts. And then the cold air in place over the north central interior areas back out across the Arctic coast into Chukchi Sea, as well as the Seward Peninsula. And a weak disturbance here brought a little bit of flurry conditions here to the St. Lawrence Island area, most of that south of the island today. And again, the northerly winds here over water trajectory picking up some moisture and causing some light snow showers right along the peninsula, and then a breakout here farther to the west. Eastern Aleutian is looking pretty good, especially in Nikolsky on out toward Atka. This front pushing in, trying to push eastward here, really not much of a factor anymore. Chance of rain reaching the Adak area, and then you can see the gradient pretty slack now, having shifted up here to the northwest into Russia as a low center pulls back toward Kamchatka Peninsula. Really left with just a big ridge of high pressure here over the central Bering Sea, except for this weak disturbance that's lost its way under the ridge. And we'll see for tonight that kind of continues the ridge right through here. Pretty good high centers here, 1,032 millibars, another 1,033 millibar ridge or high center up there on the Russian coast near Wrangel Island. And then this batch of moisture here, very weak trough, kind of remnants of one of those frontal boundaries, surges of moisture that came up and then kind of slipped on through. So some areas of flurries, light snow, possibly from St. Matthew Island down across the Pribilofs. Could see a few snow showers, light snow showers, hit the eastern Aleutians on those northerly winds, and that's about it. Same patterns you saw today for the Alaska Peninsula. Dry and cold here over the western central interior, right out to the Bering Sea coast and the Seward Peninsula. Again, those wind chill advisories out until noon tomorrow for those 40 to 50 degree below zero wind chill temperatures. Otherwise, still a chance of snow showers here for the Barren Islands, possibly in the southern Cook Inlet and Kachemak Bay area, and maybe Seldovia to Homer, maybe a chance of some snow, light snow later tonight, and then down the east side of Kodiak Island. And then also, again, moisture beginning to build now along the North Gulf Coast once again, kind of advecting back to the west-northwest, and chances for snow showers or light snow increase once again late tonight here across the North Gulf Coast. And then this area kind of persists in place through tonight and into tomorrow as well. And a break over the northern panhandle of that system just about washed out at this time. Next trough swinging in brings rain and snow in across the southern southeast coast later tonight after midnight, gradually shifting northward. And we'll see tomorrow that whole batch lifts northward here, so periods of light snow across much of the southeast coast. Could be a little bit mixed in the afternoon along the coast here in the southern areas, but definitely in the form of snow for the North Gulf Coast. Now moisture pulling back to the northwest and northward. So again, those conditions dropping to IFR, say for Chilkoot and White Pass in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, and that same deterioration of conditions will take place here, especially Prince William Sound in toward Passage Canal, and looks like some snow will reach into Alyeska and probably get as far east as the Chugach Mountains. Otherwise, just mostly cloudy skies here for Cook Inlet, south central Alaska. Gusty gap winds through the passes of the western Alaska Range, and breezy, cool snow showers, Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay area, and less of that over the Pribilofs. They're basically under the domination of high pressure out there, but this weak disturbances keep slipping on through. And other than that, just cold and dry with light winds over the west and northwest interior. And this weak trough still milling around, kind of oscillating around up here, keeps a chance of light snow for the eastern Arctic coast. On down across say Arctic Village into the Yukon Flats. And farther out to the west, not a lot going on, pretty quiet here. The next system way out there, the original one now just washed out here. This one even weaker and farther to the west. And then it looks like that will slip on through here with some higher pressure building over Kamchatka Peninsula Monday night, and then shifting eastward, so I'll drive that thing into the Bering Sea with an area of light snow, kind of an extensive area of light snow here with this weak warm front as it may reach the southwest coast by Tuesday afternoon here, and then down the Alaska Peninsula, very light amounts and just a chance at this point in time. And then the cold front back through here will swing some snow chances into the Adak-Atka area late in the day and Tuesday evening. Otherwise, continue clear and cold here, western interior, all the way up to the Nonotac Valley areas and Point Hope and to Point Lay. And then you get back into the clouds, chance of snow showers, which actually looks like it's a little bit further to the west now in the central interior. And it looks like a chance of snow with that trough all the way down across south central Alaska to just about Kodiak Island. Chance of snow showers in the North Gulf Coast. Stronger system coming up to the Queen Charlotte, so rain and snow on the increase along with the gusty winds here over the southeast coast. And cold outflow, whatever precipitation you have over the northern areas will be in the form of snow. And for low temperatures tonight in the minus 20s and minus 30s here over just about all of the interior north and west of the Alaska Range, minus 5 to 15 for Bristol Bay, right around 0, 5 to 10 above, give or take here with the clouds for south central Alaska to mid-20s along the North Gulf Coast and a little milder over the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow afternoon, well below 0 over the interior, lower to mid-teens, south central Alaska, mid to upper 30s for the Panhandle, and mid-30s for the Aleutians. Lows for Tuesday morning, again quite cold here, down to maybe in the lower minus 40s in the colder areas. Otherwise, 25 to 35 below to the Arctic coast and single numbers south central Alaska, while the Aleutians right around freezing there. Pribilof's upper 20s though, a little cooler, and down to 7 there, St. Lawrence Island at Savunga, and temperatures generally in the upper 20s to mid 30s across the southeast coast. Highs Tuesday afternoon, 35 to lower 40s there for the Panhandle, well below zero over much of the interior, above zero south of the Alaska Range.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather here. A couple of swaths of marginal VFR out over the Bering Sea, on down across the west central Aleutians here, Kis-Kamchatka Island, and then the other one from St. Matthew Island down across the Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians, up the Alaska Peninsula, pick up a little bit of IFR there over the mountainous terrain of the peninsula toward the Aleutian Range. A pretty good VFR here, western interior, northern Bering Sea, western Arctic coast, and then marginal VFR with areas of IFR, mostly over toward the border here along that east side of the trough axis. We have that general southerly flow condition, marginal VFR, patch IFR, Kenai Peninsula, and marginal just isolated IFR over the southeast coast. For Monday afternoon, I got some IFR here over toward the border and up toward Lincoln Glacier Bay. Batch of moisture shifting up to the north and northwest throughout the day there. Same thing going on here along the North Gulf Coast in the Prince William Sound and over toward northern Cook Inlet and the Talkeetnas. And that same pattern here over the eastern interior with a little bit more in the way of IFR up along the eastern north slope. And then for Tuesday morning, still same pattern here. Marginal VFR now a little bit farther to the west and all the way over to the border with some areas of IFR embedded in that from the Alaska Range all the way up actually into the Arctic Ocean. VFR through here, back to the west, and then you get out toward the Bering Sea and quite an area marginal VFR, but not too bad here over the central Aleutians to about Nikolsky. And south side of the peninsula, northwest winds make it VFR, marginal on the north or the north side there, and not too bad out west. As far as Tuesday afternoon goes, kind of an enhancement here, an expansion of the IFR from roughly about the Alaska Range across the Tanana Valley and all the way up Brooks Range northward. Pretty good IFR there for the central eastern areas. VFR persists out here with the dry air over the west. Marginal VFR hugging the coastline with IFR from Nunivak Island back up to just south of St. Lawrence Island and breaking out here for the North Gulf Coast and across the Panhandle. Looks like becoming mostly VFR afternoon. Marginal for the Aleutians. Passes shaping up like this. Sanatuvik occasionally marginal tomorrow. Same forecast for Adigan as well. Marginal VFR. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, looks like VFR for at least another day. Rainy, hopefully, too. There'll be a little thicker clouds, but of the VFR variety, but windy. You're looking pretty marginal there, both north and south entrance. Isabel, same forecast, marginal VFR, and also for Mentasta, occasionally marginal. And for Tanita, with some moisture on the increase here and kind of enhancing throughout the day, should start marginal becoming IFR into the afternoon. And for Portage, marginal VFR becoming IFR, especially on that eastern entrance. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR, moisture flowing north and northwest, becoming IFR in the afternoon. Freezing levels, not much to see here at the surface, really kind of meandering across the Bering Sea out here, then dropping well to the south in that northerly flow, back up to Prince William Sound, down the southeast coast, 2,000 feet there over Dixon entrance. And icing tomorrow. Got that band again here just east of that trough axis there. We got the rising motion, the moisture flowing northward. So areas of here for the Gulf of Alaska up along the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound here, this shifting back to the west a little bit throughout the day time, pretty narrow there, all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast and then in across much of the southeast coast. Pretty good chance of seeing some possible isolated moderate rime icing there, otherwise light. And a couple of bands, the first front weakening, the next system bringing another batch of moisture, having a real tough time making any eastward progression. And that due to this big upper level ridge here across the Bering Sea. So you can see a split flow here, jet stream coming out of Asia, and then the stronger branch drops down underneath, cuts underneath the ridge, weaker branch wrapping back up, and then we got the north-northwest winds, about 60 knots here, keeping the cold air locked in out over the Bering Sea in the west, otherwise trough in the Gulf of Alaska. And for 9,000 feet, pretty good flow again here, 40 to 50 knots across the Bering Strait, and then southward along the southwest coast, Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay, and then south-southwest on the western side of that ridge, and southeasterlies 25 to 30 off the coast here up to the North Gulf Coast. Pretty light over the eastern interior and the Panhandle. 3,000 feet, about the same pattern here. Low pressure southeast of Kodiak Island. Southerlies 20 to 25, turn southeast, and then easterly here up and in along the North Gulf Coast. And then north to northeast, or pretty much north here, 30 to 50 knots across Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. And so turbulence, quite a widespread area of considerable moderate here over the southwest interior and the Alaska Peninsula.
Her name is Patty Wagstaff, one of the most celebrated aerobatic pilots of all time. Three-time U.S. National Aerobatic Champion, she is the first woman to win this title. Because of her achievements, Patty has been honored by the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum as a pioneer of flight, and her Goodrich Extra 260 aircraft occupies the same gallery at the Smithsonian as Amelia Earhart's Lockheed Vega.
I have to admit, what I do seems like a pretty dangerous way to make a living. I suppose that's part of the appeal, why so many people come out to see me fly and to see me take these risks. But as fellow pilots, I'll let you in on a little secret. There's risk, all right. As you know, anytime you climb into an aircraft, there's risk. But over the years, I've learned to minimize that risk by careful preparation, training, planning, common sense, and constant situational awareness. Attention to safety keeps me alive in the air. But safety doesn't begin at the top of an inverted loop. Safety begins on the ground before you get in your airplane.
As pilots, most of us have seen a great deal of change in airport operations over the past few years. Today, there are nearly 70 million tower operations annually, and the number is growing each year. Pilots are challenged with more and more complex air traffic procedures, more complicated airport layout design. More and more, it is an environment of very real risk. But just as Patty Wagstaff has developed strategies for mitigating risk in the air, pilots can do the same on the ground by following standard procedures, such as using airport diagrams and planning their taxi routes.
The great majority of runway incursions are caused by pilot error. And the great majority of those errors, more than 70%, are caused by general aviation pilots. Those of us who have been flying for a while remember that they didn't teach us much about runway safety back in the days when we were in training. In recent years, that's changed. The FAA has developed a number of educational programs and strategies to help pilots improve runway safety. In fact, with more than 650,000 pilots and more than 240,000 aircraft all conducting millions of operations around the clock, it's amazing how safe our airports are. But still, with the best of training, collisions can happen at any airport, at any time, to any pilot. We may be good pilots, but we are also human. And sometimes we make very human mistakes.
And ground Cessna 9308. Say again.
Runway incursions are most often the result of a loss of situational awareness. For a variety of reasons, the pilot becomes confused by the airport's signs and layout, or doesn't listen to or understand the controller's instructions, or simply fails to follow instructions.
Cessna 3 Sierra Papa.
Hold short, runway 26 left.
453 Sierra Papa, hold short, runway 26 left.
Cessna 3 Sierra Papa, you're over the whole line.
Often this is because he or she is unfamiliar with the airport, the pilot's fatigued, or is distracted by something in the cockpit.
You know what I was doing last night?
For a few critical seconds, pilots lose track of where they are in relation to their surroundings.
You can imagine how important it is for me to focus on situational awareness. In the air, my life depends on it. If I don't know precisely where I am and where I'm going, and the tasks required to get me there, the consequences could be catastrophic. And the same goes for you, and for me, on the ground.
One of the first keys to situational awareness is attention to detail even before you start your engine. Just as we always study area charts and weather information before we fly, it's important to be thoroughly familiar with the airport's layout before we taxi. Every airport is different, so it's important to obtain and study airport diagrams. Pay particular attention to complex or confusing runway and taxiway intersections and runway thresholds. Some airports publish hotspots on their airport diagrams. For example, intersections, where pilots should be especially vigilant. Obviously, we should make a similar study of the airport at our destination. Once you are thoroughly familiar with the airport layout, make sure you review the signs you will encounter as you taxi toward the active runway. Some simple phrases can help you remember what the signs mean. Black square, you're there. These black signs tell you which runway or taxiway you're on right now. Yellow array points the way. These yellow signs with black arrows point you toward a runway or a taxiway, or toward a destination, such as a ramp. If you see white numerals on a red sign, remember, red and white, runways in sight. This type of sign shows the hold position for the runway. Remember, yellow markings represent taxiways, and white markings represent runways.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the sea ice analysis for today. Continuing to spread southward here, south of St. Lawrence Island and also westward off the southwest coast, and even an increase down here along the area south of Nunivak Island to Kuskokwim Bay. Lesser ice, but a little bit of a tad of an increase here for Bristol Bay, as well as looks like south of the Forelands and Cook Inlet. And the coastal water forecast, we've got south to southwest at 25 knots with 12 to 13 foot seas here for the south coast, turning south farther north there on the central to north coast at 25, and then east 20 to 25 up here along the far eastern North Gulf Coast. Lynn Canal north at 30 knots. Small craft advisories for Stevens Passage with northeast 25 gusts to 40, southeast 25 with 5 foot seas for Clarence Strait. And then Tuesday outlook, southeast 30 for Clarence Strait, 6 foot seas. Northeasterlies continue there for Stevens Passage at 30 knots with seas at 6 feet. North 30 knots, gusts 45 knots now. Increase in the winds there for northern Lynn Canal, and winds right out of the east at 25, 13 foot seas on the south coast, 25 to 30 knots here for the north coast with gusts of 35 knots on the extreme north side. And then for Cook Inlet, light northeast tomorrow at 10, but south of the Foreland, small craft advisories right out of the north at 25. Northwest 40 for Kachemak Bay and north 35 for gales also for Barren Islands, but light easterlies at 15 for the western North Gulf Coast with small craft advisories here for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound northeast 15 with 2 foot seas. They'll pick up a little bit there at 20 knots for the day Tuesday, but seas only up to 3 feet, and then come down for the eastern North Gulf Coast, 20 knots out of the east, still 15 knot winds for the western North Gulf Coast. 40 knots now for the Barrens out of the northwest, and 45 knots for Kachemak Bay with 12 foot seas, lighter for southern Cook Inlet down to 15. And for Kodiak Island, winds out of the north-northwest at 30 knots with seas 6 to 8 feet. Sitkinak all the way down to Cape Sarachev, north winds 40 knots, gust of 55, 10 to 13 foot seas. Minimum gales here out of the north on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and 30 knots for Bristol Bay. Outlook is for lighter winds for Bristol Bay on Tuesday. And we still have gales going here on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula from Cape Sarachev all the way up through Shelikof Strait, 30 knots there on the east side of Kodiak. Aleutians, Unalaska Island, that's where the strongest winds will be. North 30 to 35 knots, gales south side of Unalaska Island. South 25 knots over the western Aleutians. Really laying down here for Adak and Atta. East 10 to 15 with seas 6 to 10 feet. And for the Tuesday outlook, 15-knot winds west of Adak all the way to Shemya, west-southwest, and 20 knots out of the west, or 15 to 20 knots out of the west here, central Aleutians, and then northwest 20 to 25 for Unalaska Island. And here for the southwest coast, quite a difference here across Nunivak Island. North side, north at 15. Minimum gales here on the south side there, 35 knots with seas in the ice-free waters 7 feet. North 20 for the Pribilofs, 7-foot seas. Light westerlies here for the St. Matthew Island area. St. Lawrence Island, north at 20 with ice-covered seas, so there's no seas, it's just ice. Okay, for the outlook for Tuesday, those winds will be east, coming down to 15 knots. Southeast 15 here. North of Nunivak Island, still a little brisk there south of Nunivak Island at 25 knots from the north. West at 20 for the Pribilofs, and light southwesterlies here for St. Matthew Island and the northern Bering Sea. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea tomorrow, pretty light winds just east at 10, light and variable here over the central and west side, and then northwesterlies 10 to 15. Not too bad there from Cape Beaufort down to Wales. And for that zone on Tuesday, north becoming northeast here, but only 10 to 15 knots again. Northeast 10 on the west side, southeast on the central coast, and really just a variable, light and variable wind pattern for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast on Tuesday as well. And for tonight, it'll be milder, cloudier with a little bit of light snow or flurries conditions here over the eastern interior from the North Gulf Coast all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. Cold and clearer back here to the west, and kind of breezy here across the western Alaska Range into Bristol Bay, and even Kodiak Island picking up a breeze, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. We've got high pressure dominating the Bering Sea continuing, keep most of the storminess out to the west, and another surge of moisture comes up to the southern southeast coast late tonight, and that'll progress west to northwest, mostly in the form of snow to the North Gulf Coast, spreading in across Prince William Sound and coming westward into Turnagain Arm, as well as possibly the Matanuska Valley. Otherwise clear and cold, chance of snow with that weak trough or flurries up there in the north. High pressure holding over the Bering Sea, but that next system gets nudged eastward, and actually a chance of light snow reaches the southwest coast late in the afternoon on Tuesday or evening. Clear and cold weather remains over the eastern interior, and a bare chance of snow over the east side.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.